this is what a foldable should kind of be. And it's got everything that you want. You don't feel like you're taking any sort of deficiencies to get some unique design.
And what we've got instead is a Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7 with ultra level upgrade. So Samsung is really telling us that this is not just an iterative upgrade.
You can just put that straight into Google, teach me how to play the game so I don't have to learn.
Teaching you or cheating?
There's also the antioxidant index, I think they call it. And it basically tracks your antioxidant level, toxin level, antioxidant level. I'm not a doctor.
I'm even a pop socket person, which is very controversial sometimes.
Does a pop socket work with a
No,
fold?
it wouldn't work with a fold.
The fact that they come with OneUI 8 out the box, I think is like quietly one of the best things.
Yeah. Welcome to a special episode of the TechRadar podcast where you're joining us on an exclusive hands-on with Samsung's newest foldables. I'm joined as always by Hamish Hector.
Hello!
Axel Metz.
Hello.
And we've also got a very special guest this episode, Nick from TA Tech Tips.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. So we've got all of the new devices on the table in front of us. There's a lot going on here, but I want to start us off by talking about my personal favourite in Samsung's foldable range, which is the flip phone. Now, Hamish, are you ready after seeing the new Flip 7 to eat your words?
I wouldn't say I'm ready to eat my words, but I think I finally understand what the Z Flip 7 and the Z Flip 7 FE kind of are, more so than I understood really who and what the Z Flip 6 was.
Yeah, and I think we'll get into a lot more about why that might be shortly. The FE is a new addition to the fold lineup, the foldables lineup in general. And I think that's a really exciting thing. We'll touch on a bit more later. But Axel, why don't you give us a quick rundown of what's changed in the Flip 7?
Yeah, so the biggest, most obvious change is that cover screen. It's now a bigger 4.1 inch display, I think, and it goes all the way around the camera ring. So kind of the biggest sticking point of the Flip series before was that Samsung maybe wasn't using the cover display as well as they could have done. We've seen on the Motorola Razr series that they kind of always have done that. And this seems more Razr-like in appearance. And I say that like as a big compliment, right? That's our favorite thing about the Razr. And now this sort of matches it. Side by side, it's a huge difference. Like this looks much more, it just looks bigger, even though maybe the frame of the phone isn't necessarily bigger, but the screen is bigger. And smaller bezels, so they're the smallest bezels ever on a Samsung folding phone, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Now 120 hertz refresh rate instead of 60. So again, when you put that side by side with the previous model, you really notice that, the speed of swiping and all that sort of thing. And yeah, just in terms of software and features, Samsung has made it as if you almost never have to open the Flip. Like a lot of the features you can just use straight from that larger cover screen. We'll talk about some, but autofocus, auto zoom, you can sort of set the phone up and control it without having to touch it, which has always been the sort of USP and the dream of the Flip series. So it's honestly a bigger upgrade than I thought it was going to be. And I thought it would really get overshadowed by the Fold, which we'll talk about, which is a big upgrade.
Yeah.
But there are certainly some big upgrades for this Flip series here, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like we're all sort of preparing to maybe sleep on the Flip a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you see it and you see how much of an improvement that front screen is. And you definitely notice it. Nick, you were playing around with some of those camera features earlier on the front of the phone. What was your feeling of those?
Yeah, I think the auto framing that we've just talked about is going to be, especially for content creation. Maybe the camera might not be as strong to create your content using the front camera, but the fact that you can have this tracking as you're moving up when you're recording, and the slider as well, the new kind of slider you can use with your front-facing camera, big improvements. Generally, I'm not someone who uses flip phones. My partner does, but I think the fact that the screen is bigger now and you've got a better camera on the front now as well. It's definitely more appealing. It's not something that I maybe would use still, but yeah, the features with the tracking, the auto framing, the slider, it's definitely ticking more boxes for me than it had done previously. But yeah, it's definitely a step up to what I was expecting.
Definitely. And I think there's some other cool features we got talked through today. There's one where you get like a ring come up around the camera bezel as well, which I think is a really nice way to sort of indicate something's happening on the screen. I think they paid a lot of attention, like you say, to actually using that real estate for native features and less so the sort of thing like it is a screen.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to just have upgraded and focused on the two big key selling points of a Flip, right? It's the flipping nature of it, the way you can set it up like you can't do with a Fold, and using that as a camera. So it's now a bigger, nicer, more usable screen, And the camera functionality of that screen is way better. So in terms of the two big upgrades, I think they've got it bang on.
Don't you find it funny that we're talking about a phone we don't need to touch as much anymore, yet we're packing so much innovation into these phones that we're not using them because we're not having to touch them. So it's a bit of a funny contradiction, really. But yeah, I find that quite fascinating.
No, it's an interesting one. They were talking about one of the AI filters that they've added, AI filter feature they've added to the Flip 7 when we had our briefing earlier, which is where you can show it a picture and it can replicate the
really cool.
filter information of that. And that's kind of like similar to what you're saying. There's less steps you have to go through perhaps to now edit your images and make them look really nice, but that almost makes the phone itself feel further away from you. You're doing less on it. You're taking that away, but I quite like that.
The ideal phone is a phone that can do loads, but you never have to actually touch it or do it. So.
Exactly. And then we've also got the Flip 7 FE. So that's the first time we've had an FE in this particular range of phones.
Yeah, so essentially it's a Flip Lite. That's what it is, right? That's what the FE series has always been for Samsung. So you've kind of got a Z Flip 6 style screen. So if you compare the FE with what we saw last year with the Z Flip 6, from the outside, they kind of look similar. It's still a 60 hertz display on the front. An Exynos 2400 chipset inside instead of the 2500 which you'll find in the Flip 7, and then I think 8 gigabytes of RAM instead of 16.
Yeah.
So it's just essentially a lower spec Flip 7.
I think the cameras are the same actually. So you've got a 50 megapixel wide, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 10 megapixel selfie lens.
So and software wise as well, you should get the same software tools in that phone. So it's just a sort of power compromise really, which you would expect if you're paying less for a phone.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that it's not got the same selling points as the 7 does, because I think that's really what's going to make that phone fly for people who have been maybe thinking, and that's where I'm in that camp particularly. I've been looking for an excuse to get into flips. I know I like Samsung phones. I just wasn't super keen on where that front screen was going, but in the 7, that's going to sell it for me. The FE maybe less so, but for a lot of people who don't necessarily want the top of the top, it will be really useful. And the cameras being the same is really nice.
And I think that's why the Flip FE kind of makes sense for me. And it is that sort of cheaper, more affordable option that it provides, because it sits in price very close to the Samsung Galaxy S25. Mm-hmm. And, that again, high end, but, still like not quite the Ultra or the Plus in terms of being a bit pricier. And so you can sort of put these two up against each other. And for me, that's kind of where the Flips should sit. With the regular Flip 7, it is the, that bigger cover screen with all those extra features, again, just makes it feel like a more complete package than maybe we've not seen before, just because that screen's been a little bit smaller. Like your Samsung is finally taking full use of that real estate that it's had on that back cover screen.
Yeah, color-wise, I think they've absolutely nailed it. I mean, we've not got the mint green, that's the online exclusive.
Yes.
But yeah, the color combination I think are really nice. I mean, standard black, can't go wrong with the matte black, but the blue for me, it's kind of Samsung's colors.
I'm the same. The blue is the nicest.
Yeah, it's really nice. And again, the matte feel of it, I think it just feels like a nice device in your hand as well. And it's lighter and thinner, so it does feel like a more intuitive phone that you're going to want to hold.
I mean, I like the blue as well. I also kind of think the coral's very pretty.
I
and so I
love the
think
coral.
but it's definitely all of the color choices, even with the FE, just sort of, I know it's standard white and standard black, but it's, striking, looks nice. All of the flips sort of play into that aesthetic, being almost as important as sort of being functionally useful and fun.
It's funny you mentioned it being a bit of an accessory. I remember when I first got the Z Flip 5 and not having a flip phone before, and it was a kind of a new thing at the time, and going out into shops and when I'm paying for my things and flipping it, and people were like, what phone's that? It was a bit of an eye catcher. So I think it is a visual kind of like, wow, you've got a flip phone. Even now, even though we are, in the generation or the age where there was plenty of flip and fold phones, it's still a folding phone is still, quite a neat innovation, I think, for me. But yeah, the colors and the way it looks, I think is another tick for me. But I'm not sure. Still, it would be a phone that I'd use daily, but it's going to do well, I think.
I would agree. I think the mint green you mentioned, it's a shame we haven't seen it in person today, but that's a bit of me. And when we're talking about it being fashion, they released last year the yellow colorway of the 6, and I think they've done really well at sort of like those nice pastel-y colors that are really, really, well, they are a bit more feminine in some ways, and I think they're capturing onto their audience where, like you're saying, it's a fashion accessory.
When you say a bit of a feminine color, do you think the phones are aimed towards the female market more so?
I've always felt, we've talked about this on the podcast before, that flip phones really have a place in the female tech audience because girl pockets are a thing. I'm going to bring them up, always bring them up. We have much smaller pockets, generally speaking, and less of them. I would also say that the front-facing, the selfie camera settings and the creator settings are, generally speaking, going to like land really well with the female audience. And I just think they are that fun element, that whimsy almost. I remember phones being such a part of your identity. And it was the same for girls back then as well. Yeah. And there's, over the years, I think it's sort of shifted away a little bit. And I think the flip brings it back to that quite nicely.
Yeah, well, growing up, every phone was different. Yes. Every person I knew had probably a different phone. Yeah. These following that suit a little bit, making it a bit different. So yeah, I think I'm with you there.
Yeah, before the podcast, Axel and I were literally having this conversation about all the different phones you used to see at school. And then over time, it kind of became very homogenized. And again, as we're saying, it's starting to diversify again. And I think, again, kind of like I already said, with the Flip FE coming down in price a little bit, again, that helps to bring it to a slightly wider market because, again, it's slightly cheaper, easier as a phone to maybe give to your kid rather than, it being an £1,000 phone or more expensive. We've seen with the Flip proper, it's coming down a little bit in price, a little bit more affordable.
And the durability has improved, which I think we might talk about a little bit when we come on to the Fold as well. But the durability has improved across the range, and that's always going to be a sticking point with foldable phones because people are nervous about sitting on them. People is me. But I think they've done a lot to sort of pave over some of the challenges that foldables are facing. And that leads on quite nicely to talking about the Fold because, Axel, I think you've got some thoughts on what the Fold represents, the latest Fold represents to the lineup, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's been quite refreshing this year in that we didn't know exactly what to expect when we came into Unpacked. I mean, we never know for sure, but Samsung itself sort of muddied the waters by teasing this Ultra product. We didn't know whether it was going to be an Ultra branded product, an Ultra product with its Ultra in the name. And what we've got instead is a Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7 with Ultra level upgrades. So Samsung is really telling us that this is not just an iterative upgrade. This is, you no longer have to compromise by choosing a Fold. You will get Ultra level upgrades. And it seems like they really addressed the sort of three big pain points people had with previous Folds. So previously you were paying more for an Ultra, more than an Ultra, but sacrificing on that sort of Ultra level camera quality you would get from the S25 Ultra, for instance. The aspect ratio, some people weren't too hot on that. It was a little off, especially when you use the phone closed. And Z Folds have always been, it's true, just thicker and kind of bulkier than like Chinese models, right? So the Honor Magic series or the Oppo Find series. And Samsung's never really tried to address it. We've never really seen them, prioritize design. And now they've kind of done all three. You've got a 200 megapixel main sensor, which is ultra equaling. The design is the thinnest and lightest we've ever seen. And I mean, it really, I think it's only 26% thinner, but it looks so much thinner than before.
Yeah, when we're talking about that size change, just to contextualize it a little bit about how far it's come. So the original Fold was 17.1 millimeters while closed. The newest is 8.9. So we're almost at the place where we're hitting, low numbers on the folded version. Unfolded, 4.2 millimeters,
which is ridiculously
insane. I mean, there'll be clips playing on screen. People will be able to see it compared to even the Fold 6. Now, Hamish, you're a Fold 6 user.
Yes.
Talk us through how you're feeling seeing this on the table in front of you with your Fold 6 next to you.
Yeah, basically Axel covered everything, so I'm probably going to rehash a bit of what he said. Because starting with that camera, I remember kind of like you said about, you have the foldable out with you in public. People go, oh, what's that? I remember, kind of a couple of months into having the Fold, I was out for dinner for some friends and one of them saw I had the Fold. She is a Samsung Galaxy S Ultra user. I can't remember which exact model she's got, but it's definitely the Ultra because she prioritizes the camera above everything else. And we were talking through it and she kind of liked the idea of there being a bigger screen. But the moment I mentioned you have to take a hit on the camera, instantly switched off. And I think so bringing up to 200 megapixels on the Z Fold 7 is such like a huge game-changing feature. Yeah. And again, just takes away one of those pain points that you sort of have when you sort of mentally go to buy it of I'm paying more money, but getting some upgrades, but losing out on other features. Now it doesn't feel like you're really losing out on anything. You are getting more from your product. The slight screen size, again, it doesn't seem like a massive difference, but you sort of put them next to each other and you do see, okay, it's a proper full size outer screen.
Yeah.
And it's not too noticeable on most apps, but sometimes you do notice on the Z Fold 6, things just feel a little bit squashed at times. They can be cut off very slightly depending on how the app is optimized. I remember, back when I was playing Marvel Snap super regularly, it would just cut off very, very slightly on the edge of the screen. And it's not the end of the world, but you do notice it with some of these things. Whereas obviously now that's not going to be as much of a problem. And when you do open it up, you're going to have a bigger display to be able to play games, watch films, read a book. It's a little bit easier to put two apps side by side, which is really awesome. And there's some new features about how you can drag AI generated images. And as you edit one image, you can see the original and the edited version, which I think is a really cool feature. And one feature that Axel didn't touch on with the camera is the Z Fold line has also had like an inner display camera. But the problem with inner display is it kind of has to poke through the screen, and normally means it's got sort of a fewer megapixels. I think on the Z Fold 6, about 4, which is, it's fine, I guess, if you're doing like a video call, but you don't really use it as a selfie camera. Whereas now it's up to 10 megapixels, but you do have a hole punch. Having also used phones like the Google Pixel 9 Pro Fold, which goes for that hole punch, it's really not that annoying. Yeah. And actually, because of how the under display camera works, you can still kind of notice it if you're looking for it anyway. So actually just going, it doesn't matter. We'll just put the hole punch in, make it a better camera. I think that's a great little upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's also worth as well just saying that you do still get the iterative upgrades that you would expect to get anyway. So it's now got an 8 Elite chipset, same as the Ultra. The battery is bigger, so you'll get longer battery life. That's all stuff we would expect a new generation of Fold to bring to the table. But it has got all that stuff. And now it really does feel like, at least from a spec sheet, obviously we haven't had too much time to test them out. It's Samsung's most expensive product. It feels like it could be their outright best phone now, which hasn't been the case for previous Folds.
I would probably agree from what we've seen so far, but obviously look out for the full review on techradar.com soon. Nick, what about you? You mentioned earlier, and also before we were filming, you're not massively a foldables person, but with this big change here, does it change your mind at all?
Yeah, they've nailed it. I think the camera, like on my account, my channel, the camera is always a sticking point for some. And we've covered this, I know, but everyone always asks me about cameras, and there's no excuse now. They've got an absolutely power monster with a chipset. They've got an awesome camera. It's thinner. Even I brought the Edge with me today just to look at the comparisons with the Edge. And the Edge was sold as this super thin phone, and it's not far off that, even when it's folded.
Yeah.
The colors again are lovely, and I just think it's a phone that, again, I would be more tempted to use now, because the last foldable phone I used was the Fold 6, the Galaxy Z Fold 6, and it was just too chunky for me. Couldn't get to terms with it. It felt like it was just, I could feel it all the time in my pocket. But this is just, it's sleek. And one thing I didn't notice when I was doing my hands-on was with the crease. I didn't even think about the crease. So it's come along so far since the first few iterations of the Fold phones, and I think Samsung have done very well with it. So I'll be super interested to see what the feedback's going to be like. But I think again it will just it's going to get a lot of traction, I think.
Yeah. And one thing we haven't really touched on is that it's also lighter than the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. So this comes in at 215 grams. So it's not a huge difference, but again, it's just so impressive how they've packed everything into a thinner frame and it's somehow also lighter and offering that same experience.
Yeah, it's just another thing you don't have to compromise on, really. Yeah. And I'll just pick it up, because we're allowed to do that. It's so thin that the USB-C port only just fits in the frame. So I'm not sure how you make it any thinner, really. And this is true of some other recent foldable phones that have come out recently. But it's quite clear that Samsung is now not behind in the design department. I'm really impressed with it, at least from a design point of view.
Absolutely. And then there's also been some software updates and upgrades as well. And that's going across various phones and devices we have on here. And then we've also heard a bit about some new AI features that are coming to things that have been improved, improvements to the AI audio eraser, which is actually quite funny because we quite recently did some testing on that while we were doing a project out in Madeira. And sound profiles are one of the things we said that we would like to see a little bit more of, auto fixing sound, and it does that now, which is cool. A couple of other AI features. You've got Gemini optimized across the device, closed and open. Same goes for the Flip. You can now access Gemini on the outer screen, which is quite cool. They've also put things like circle to search in game, which was an interesting one because they've done game optimizations overall for the Fold. I had a little play of Genshin Impact earlier. Honestly, I was working hard. And that looks beautiful, runs gorgeously on, again, such a thin and light phone. But you can now circle to search. So if you're struggling to fight a boss or something, you can just put that straight into Google. Teach me how to play the game so I don't have to learn.
Teaching you or cheating?
I think it's helping.
No,
it's helping.
Min-maxing my time.
That's why you got to work out who you're going to take with you and do stuff. I'll back you up.
Thank you. Also, if you haven't played Genshin Impact, there are a lot of characters to choose from, and I don't have time to choose them. I just don't. I have time to play the play and not do the do.
Maybe if I start playing Genshin Impact, which I don't, I will use Circle to Search to help me in every single level. And
you might well need it. You might
so.
well need it. Were there any other of the AI optimizations that have come in here that sort of struck out to you guys? Because that felt like there was quite a lot going on.
I think it's a lot of just refinements to existing features, which is what Samsung's been doing for the last few Unpacks. And that's a good thing. I mean, right, like, so audio eraser you mentioned, and then object eraser. So now it does suggested removals for you. So it's just kind of taking the manualness out of these features. So you really just have to press it once and it will suggest what the best, treatment for the photo is or for the sound profile. Just kind of giving a more hands-off experience.
Yeah, and you tried that a bit earlier. I
did. And there's also a lot more templates for your draw assist, isn't there, for your generative edits? So which I quite like, because I think it was quite limited before. As much as I like to use it, I felt like I did want more. So again, it's just tweaks on kind of perfecting what they've already done. So I think it's a good one.
And I kind of already touched on it, and you've touched on it. But again, I think for me, it's just the using sort of the unique design elements of these phones with the AI. So it's on the Z Fold 7, it's being able to have the original photo on one side and the edited photo on the other, so you can see what you've changed and what hasn't been changed yet. It's having Gemini on that outer screen. So as part of our briefing, they showed us a little clip of just someone putting the phone down on the table, activating Gemini, and then just being able to chat with it while they were playing with their dog and ask questions about toys they could get. And I thought that's really quite a nice little thing because it's just sort of there chugging away. And I think that it's using the unique design elements of these phones in more ways is never going to be a bad thing, because it just makes you, as someone that's got this phone and that is its sort of selling point, makes you feel like you've bought into something that's worthwhile rather than just it being any other phone that just happens to also fold.
Yeah, I mean, overall though, this does feel like a very hardware focused Unpacked. I mean, software has kind of taken a back seat, which I'm really glad about. It's not often these days that we see such dramatic hardware improvements and things that people have been asking for. Like, we know these phones have AI. We know Samsung Galaxy AI is great and all these features, but we've seen them before, and they're better than ever now. But really, this Unpacked is definitely about the hardware features we've seen for at least the phones anyway.
Yeah. And there is one small software thing that's worth noting, I suppose, is that they're all going to come with OneUI 8 out of the box rather than OneUI 7 and waiting for the update. So that's some good news. But like you say, it's broadly hardware, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, like, the fact that they come with OneUI 8 out the box, I think is like quietly one of the best things.
Yeah.
Just because considering that the Z Fold 6 and a few of those older phones that really aren't like the S25 and the S25 Edge, we've only basically just got OneUI 7.
It was like 2 months ago.
And so the fact that OneUI is just here right now, Android 16's also basically only just come out as well. And so again, that just feels really good to feel like you're sort of really on like the forefront of it, rather than sort of having to wait several months for the S25 to finally get it, or I guess the S26 for the 16, and then wait even longer for every other phone to get it. So yeah, it's I think a cool little thing.
And the only other thing I think we haven't really touched on much is the durability changes. So we got talked through a bit of it, and without the papers in front of us, it's hard to remember every single of the complex names that go into things. But the hinge on both the Fold and the Flip has been improved. In the Flip, I seem to remember them saying they've actually housed some of the components in the hinge now.
Well, I think now the bezel is so thin that they have been able to waterproof the circuitry better than they had been able to do before.
Yeah.
So I think the IP rating is the same, but the sort of the quality of it is a bit better.
Yeah.
And then I think just for the Fold, it's worth saying that it's got ceramic shield on the back, which is the same as the S25 Edge. That's that kind of hybrid glass, aluminium.
It's the same aluminium case as well, which I guess sort of helps play into that, making it thinner than it's been before, lighter than it's been before, but still pretty durable. Kind of like how the Edge is, it's a pretty sturdy machine.
Yeah, without actually like picking them up and breaking them in half. We can no. He wants to. We won't let him. Outside of doing that, I think just from feeling it, opening it, closing it, like it feels robust, it feels sturdy. Even with C6, there's a few times where I've got one at home and I've like picked it up and been a little bit like, oh, did I just overbend that? Did I like to take things too far? And I feel like these, given their thinness, feel pretty good so far. We'll have to put them through our tests. But did you have any early feelings on the durability side of things?
Only that, like if you think about when these sorts of phones first came out, durability was such a concern for everybody and a worry, and rightly, like a lot of the phones, not just Samsung, everyone's phones started to break a year later or something would happen. And now, especially as you're paying so much money, like that just shouldn't happen for a product of that price. It just doesn't feel like it's as much of a concern anymore. Like you said, obviously we're going to have to test it and ask me in 2 years later, in 2 years time, whether I still think the same thing. But it's got a new hinge. I think both of them have got a new hinge, so you can do 8 million folds or whatever you can do.
I mean, you talk about saying, ask me in 2 years' time. I mean, I've had this.
You nearly didn't have it anymore.
But I've had this for, pretty
Best
much close
part,
to a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't use a case with it normally. And it's, it's lasted me. And that's kind of one thing I did want to touch on, was the fact that it is still the IP48 rating. So that means it's pretty much waterproof. I think you can now find phones that are classified as IP9, but that's literally they're being blasted directly with water jets. And there's a part of me that goes, when is that going to happen in real life? 8 for most people is going to be fine. The IP4 means that basically some dust can still get in. It's basically anything smaller than 1 millimeter. So things like sand. And I think that is a fear for some people. But I mean,
We don't live by the beach, so it's fine.
That's the thing. In the past year, I think I've been to the beach twice. I've been to the beach a few more times, but specifically a sandy beach, I've been to one twice. And, a year on, it's still pretty great. Like, I do get that for some people that will be a worry, but just kind of from my perspective, having used it for a year, initially that was something I was really worried about. And it's kind of not really been a massive problem. And I'm sure that will be the same for a lot of other people that, I'm not someone that's regular in a workshop chopping away at wood with lots of dust flying around or anything. Yeah. So for some people like that, but a lot of, regular people, just day to day working in an office, it's more than good enough.
Well, I agree. I don't think the IP rating matters too much on these devices, just because people aren't buying them for that.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not rugged.
They're not rugged phones. People, they know what they're going to buy that phone for, and it's not to go to the beach and take action photos on, is it? Even though the camera can do that now, it's not built for those kind of people. So the IP rating for me is never really a big deal.
No, I agree. I think there was a point in time where it felt like something that was going to be scary and dangerous, and potentially, looking at a phone as thin as this, you think to yourself like, oh, does it need protection against that stuff? But it's like you say, if your lifestyle requires it, then you're probably going to be shopping for that phone anyway, right?
Exactly.
I mean, again, it's also it's improved over time. Like back the original sort of foldables, you might be looking at like an IP24 or whatever. That's when maybe more people might want to worry a little bit more. But I think we're definitely at the stage where, if you kind of are getting one of these, you know what you're getting, and it's going to easily handle pretty much.
And there's all these warranties in place, and the Samsung Club if you signed up to that sort of thing.
And you get a case. Like I'm not using a case, but you can.
Which is crazy. But
See, I'm a case person, but I feel like I wouldn't want to make it any thicker because it's such a thin phone.
Yeah.
You want to show it off, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I am a case person. But yeah, we'll see.
I think I'm very much a case person. I'm always prepared to make my phone twice as thick for it. But when you look at this, it's like, oh, but it's so pretty.
Don't spoil it.
Yeah.
I'm even a pop socket person, which is very controversial sometimes.
Oh, that is these days.
Yeah, it is. But I just feel like because of me making content, I feel like I can hold the phone easier. Little pixie hands helps. I've got tiny little hands.
Does a pop socket work with a
No,
fold?
it wouldn't work with a fold.
No.
I think that's maybe what puts me off having a fold. Maybe. It's
Another
'cause-
point for the flip gang.
They would struggle with the flip. It's just
No, you could put it on the back of the flip easy. Because if you put it on the back of the fold, it's going to be wonky. It's going to spin around when you've got it in open mode. You don't buy my argument,
I'm
that's
not
fine.
afraid. I don't really get what you're on.
As it happens, strong bit wonky. One kind of bugbear I do have with a lot of phones these days is the camera's so big, when you got it flat, it does wobble. So maybe a pop socket would counteract that because it would balance it out.
Or just the case in general.
Or just the
to be
case in
fair,
general.
Yeah. So before we close out this section, what's everyone's favourite? The Flip, the Fold, or the Flip FE?
Fold, but in blue specifically. Look at that
Fold.
blue. Look at the blue.
Such a nice
So
blue.
nice.
Hamish?
I mean, obviously it's the Fold, but I'm also more of the silver guy. That's
Okay.
so yeah. If Samsung notices that their Fold 7 just seems a little bit thicker than normal, it's I don't know what happened, man.
Nothing suspicious
Nothing
or
suspicious
untoward
about
has
that
gone
one.
on here. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I'm with Axel, definitely the blue Fold.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm a
Yeah.
Coral Flip. Coral Flip all the way home.
This is a Fold show. I'm taking over.
Yeah, fine. You can have your folds.
I host
There's
the
3
show
of them,
now.
and I'll have all 3 of the flips. So we know how we feel about them, but what do we think about the consumer? Are people going to pick these up? And if they aren't sure, why should or shouldn't they? Why don't you start?
Well, I think with the whole lineup, Samsung has now addressed concerns at 2 ends of the foldable market. So on the one end, on the lower end, there's now an FE, which there hasn't ever been before. So, this technology is now more accessible than it ever has been. It's not cheap, but it's certainly cheaper than it was before. And at the top end, like we've mentioned, it feels less of a compromise now to spend, 4 figures on a folding phone.
Do you think it's going to change things though?
I think at the top end, yes. I think now people who were always wanted to have the kind of best now have this as a potential best rather than just, let's get the Ultra.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the best Samsung phone on paper.
What about you guys? What do you think?
My concern is probably with the FE, because I don't know whether the price point there would make me want to buy that over something like the S25. But yeah, the Fold, the Z Fold 7 and the Z Flip 7, I've definitely going to be tipping those people who weren't too sure, like you just said. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what market they hit at this point. But yeah, I think they'll do well, just because like I said earlier, they've just they've ticked the boxes that they needed to tick on this device.
And Hamish, what about you?
I think I kind of agree a little bit. I'm going to slightly disagree with Nick, but only I think on the flip side of things, I'd almost swap it around. I think for me, the FE kind of being a similar price to the S25 might mean more people opt for that option. And so I think we might see more flips because of that. And I think, again, as Axel and Nick have both already touched on, the Fold basically being that kind of ultra package all in one, I think will probably mean that people will go for it. And I think there have been foldables out there, but I think we will probably start to see them a little bit more, maybe start to hit the mainstream, because this kind of feels like Samsung has addressed kind of all the main problems that people could have. And now I've kind of written about it a little. I feel like you've kind of, with these, have got that sort of 1.0 release of this is what a foldable should kind of be. And it's got everything that you want. You don't feel like you're taking any sort of deficiencies to get some unique design.
You're now just choosing between form factor.
Yeah,
rather
now
than
just
specs.
choosing between form factor, which I think is kind of where foldables needed to be.
Yeah. I think with the flips, it's a gradual erosion of that market. People still don't realize, like you say, it's a novelty when you pull one out. People are sort of shocked to see them in this day and age. So we're still getting to the point where people realize you can buy a flip phone. Yeah. Foldable phones, people seem to be a bit more aware of just because you see a bit more of them. I think it's not going to be a sea change for flips. People aren't going to suddenly go and buy one if they weren't before, personally. But I think people will notice them now. Now you've got that screen, now you've got these nice colours. Not that you didn't have nice colours before. They're going to notice them.
I think you said it earlier about again, I've not just said that I'm a bit concerned about the FE not competing maybe, but like you said, it is a good way to introduce yourself to a good solid Samsung product that you're not sure whether you want to spend, all your money on the the main flip. But so it is a good entry level for those who are kind of unsure. But again, I think if I am going to go for a flip, I would go for the Z Flip 7.
But we're tech enthusiasts.
But we are,
so
exactly.
There's always going to be the case, like, I want the best one, really.
Yeah.
But it's still a solid phone. The FE is still going to be a solid phone.
Yeah,
You're still going to
100%.
get, for the average consumer who just wants a good phone with a decent camera, it's still going to be a really good option. So, maybe I'm wrong.
No, we'll see. Before we close out, I do want to touch on the watches that we've seen today as well. So we've got the Watch 8 and we have the Watch 8 Classic as well. The Classic sort of giving you more of that, as you would assume, classic analog watch feel. It's got the rotating bezel on the outside to navigate through the settings. It's also got the extra button on the side to assign an action to, which you can do things like, stopwatch, for example, just for quickly while you're training. And then you've also got the Watch 8 as well, which just is a lovely step forward basically in that line. Not massive landmark changes necessarily. The features, however, there's lots going on there. We've seen there's a running training, sleep training, all these sorts of things as well.
There's also the antioxidant index, I think they call it. So the first ever on a smartwatch. And yeah, it basically tracks your antioxidant level. Antioxidant level? I'm not a doctor. I don't know, but it seems really cool, and I really want to try it.
They're saying you get antioxidants from eating healthily, and you can sort of build up. It can detect if you've been drinking more or smoking more or not getting as good sleep.
Yes.
But one thing that is interesting is that it's a sensor that doesn't work like your others, where you wear it as a watch. You have to take it off and scan your thumb. And I mean, I've kind of talked about this before on the podcast. I think we are sort of reaching the stage of what sensors can do from a wrist. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're going to have to start exploring different ways of tracking things, because it's just like how biology sensors work. This part of your body isn't going to tell you everything.
No.
That's not how our bodies work, folks. And so I think sort of starting to introduce some of that elements as getting people used to the fact that it's doing a lot of that sensing, but you just have to use it in slightly different ways. Mm-hmm. And still, it's fairly convenient. We didn't try it out, but we were told.
How often are you going to be doing it?
We were told it would also only take a few seconds to do anyway, 6 to 7. So that's pretty easy to do. Just quickly scan it. I mean, you could just remember to do it whenever you go to put your watch on charge, basically.
Yeah, basically. No, I think there's, like you say, very software-led launch for the 8 series. I like the classic best for sure. I think that watch face is gorgeous. I think the straps are lovely. Oh, they have actually changed the strap attachment mechanic slightly as well. I did struggle with it a little bit myself when I tried it earlier, but I am also big dumb, so it could just be that.
One new feature, they've got the sleep apnea feature as well, which is medically now certified, which is a massive deal. So I don't think it's going to, people shouldn't, self-diagnose themselves, but it's a good indication now to get yourself to the doctor because you've got your watch warnings. But I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with smartwatches, just because, you've got fantastic sleep tracking, but I don't want to sleep in a big watch.
Yeah.
It's one of them things where, I love the fact that it's got all of these mod cons and you can do so many things with your health benefits, but I just don't like sleeping wearing bulky things. So it's kind of negates the reason to have one for me. I mean, the Galaxy rings cover that in a lot of ways, and there is more innovation there. They will have things like sleep apnea on the ring, because there are other ring companies that offer the sleep apnea side of things as well.
Like the Ring Con.
The Ring Con, I just had that one as well. So, the look of the watches is fantastic. I love the rotating bezel. That's been brought back. That's a big fan favorite. But I don't wear watches too much. But it's got fantastic technology involved though.
I mean, thinking of it, I could not bear to wear the classic on my wrist at night. There is no way. I mean, I've got little bony, tiny. That's not going to be comfortable to sleep in whatsoever. But if you had a Galaxy ring as well, then obviously they will work in tandem. And you've got they're progressing forwards with the smart home integrations they have with smartwatches, which for me as a smart home girly, I'm here for, not only are you able to get your watch to communicate with your smart devices now in order to optimize your environment, but it can actually give you a report of it alongside your health data. And I think that sort of thing's really interesting and useful. But again, it has to be in the right form factor. And we're getting to this place where a smartwatch is now a fitness tracker, but not all fitness trackers are smartwatches, obviously. Sometimes you just look at a fitness tracker and you think, that's really nice and light, and I could just chuck it on and it lasts like 6 weeks. But in saying that, they don't look as nice as these do.
Did he say as well it's the first watch with Google Gemini integration as well, or have I made that up?
I think out the box. Was the specific wording on it, but
right, and got now brief on there as well, haven't you? So there is a few different things that you haven't had before.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things that is kind of on the opposite, drawing me into wanting to pick some of these up, because I've used a few other fitness trackers like the Ring Con, and it's cool to get that data. But the fact that I could put on the Galaxy Watch 8, which I guess is a little thinner, so it might be easier to wear in bed than the slightly thicker Classic. But I could put that on, and I would get sort of that report of how well I've slept sent to sort of that new Now Brief that's coming to more and more Galaxy devices. So obviously these will all have Now Brief, which will be really useful. And just having that data there, sort of using that AI to just give you everything in a much quicker and easier to understand.
So you don't have to open your phone.
So you just don't have to keep checking through all the different apps. It's just all there in front of you. And I think there's a bunch of really cool things. Like we only briefly talked about it, but that running coach feature, I think, is like going to be quite exciting alternative to Couch to 5K for a lot of people, because obviously, Couch to 5K is great for a lot of people. I know Matt Evans, who's our fitness editor, has, I think even on the podcast said, it's a great way to start if you at nowhere. But, this kind of lets you even fine tune that further. You might not want to go to 5K. You might only want to go to 3K, and it can give you just a 12-minute run, and you can work out, what sort of level are you at. And it could say, actually, going to 5K is maybe a bit too easy for you. Let's try and get you to 6 or 7 and give you that training regimen to sort of help you push yourself a little bit further, which I think is, again, really just going to be handy for a lot of people. And
you've got the real-time updates as well. It's giving you, like, while you're going, I think it said about, it can adjust your pace while you're going. It can potentially even, I would imagine, detect if there's maybe some road traffic coming up ahead, or in the future at the very least.
I'm not a runner, but I want to do it to see what it says about my running.
Oh God, I don't, because I know what it'll say, and it'll say go back home and sit. Just don't move. You're fine.
And also, one other feature I don't think we've touched on was vascular load.
Yes.
So that's just where it can basically, the Samsung Galaxy Watch 8 and the Watch 8 Classic can sort of detect sort of how hard your heart is having to work. And again, just provides you a little bit of information on, okay, your heart's beating a little bit sort of harder than it maybe should be. Let's work on your sleep, let's work on your diet. And again, just sort of packaging it with this AI and this Now Brief and doing everything and, helping people live a little bit more healthily. I'm sure that's not going to be a bad thing.
No, not at all.
Definitely. I think it gives you a reason to kind of be part of the ecosystem now, because there's so many elements to what Samsung are bringing out now that add towards that kind of having everything in one go, and even the watch linking to all your buds and all that kind of stuff. It's just all kind of full circle, and you're just nailing all that kind of ecosystem and keeping everything together.
Yeah.
Very Apple.
Yeah.
Do not say that name. Do not say that name.
The only other announcement we heard today that I think is worth highlighting, we've not got it here on the table, but they're also doing a new colorway of the Samsung Galaxy Watch Ultra with the blue strap to match the phones, which I think is a nice touch. Marries it all in quite nicely. And that is not seeing any major hardware updates, but there is going to be 64 gigabytes upgrade that is hitting the market and replacing the existing 32 gigabyte one. Not huge news, but nice to see. I think I am happy they are waiting to give us an Ultra 2 watch and a Ring 2, because it feels like we are getting to the point in tech where you see products released just because people are expecting product to release, not because there's something to add. And I think them pausing on that was a nice move. I like that.
And with that new Ultra, sort of slightly upgraded Ultra, is going to be coming with OneUI 8 out the box. And we did ask, and basically the Galaxy Watch Ultra that already exists, if you've got the 32 gigabyte version at home and you're wearing it, that will get the OneUI 8 update as well, pretty much about the same time, maybe even a little bit sooner. So that's pretty cool as well, that again, you won't feel like you're being left behind even by the slight upgrades.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that is about all we've got time for today, guys. We want to give a big thank you to Samsung for hosting us today. Thanks to Hamish and Axel for joining me, as you so often do. And thanks to Nick for being our very special guest. Where can people follow you, Nick?
I'm on TikTok, so you can follow me on there, TA Tech Tips. Instagram, TA.TechTips, same as YouTube as well. So yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a blast. I've had a great time.
Amazing. We've had a great time with you too, Nick.
Thank you.
And you can also follow TechRadar on our various socials, where we are, predictably, TechRadar. If you want to check out the full review of all of Samsung's latest products, subscribe to us here on YouTube and check out techradar.com, where we'll post all the latest tech news, reviews, and how-tos. We'll see you there. Bye.
Bye.
End.